please click to subscribe. I've got some breaking news. It's kind of a last-minute episode that I'm throwing together because of this information that I've been able to confirm.
Before we step into that quiet, sun-drenched desert neighborhood in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona, I want to ask you a serious question down in the comments. When an 84-year-old woman vanishes from her home in the middle of the night without a single neighbor hearing a sound, do you believe it is the work of an anonymous, cold-hearted stranger, or does a crime executed with this level of precision almost always require intimate, insider knowledge of the victim's daily routine? Drop your thoughts right now, because the digital footprint and timeline surrounding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie are raising questions that no official press release can easily explain. He said it was simple: a routine ride home, a garage door closing in the dark, and a quiet, ordinary goodbye in the Catalina Foothills. Nothing strange, nothing dramatic, and nothing that should have become the terrifying opening scene of a national mystery. Tomaso Chioni's account of that evening was steady from the very beginning. He gave his elderly mother-in-law, Nancy Guthrie, a lift back to her residence after a calm family gathering. He waited as she stepped inside, watched the heavy garage door roll down to secure the house, and then pulled out of the driveway and drove away. That was supposed to be the final, ordinary moment of a quiet weekend night, a dutiful son-in-law helping an 84-year-old relative get home safely, a harmless, domestic errand ending a normal evening. But 4 hours later, that exact same residence became the epicenter of a massive federal investigation. At precisely 1:47 in the morning, while the Catalina Foothills sat silent under the dark desert sky, a masked figure stepped onto Nancy Guthrie's front porch. The figure moved with purpose toward the video doorbell camera, looked directly into the lens, and reached up to cut the power. After that single, deliberate movement, the camera went completely dark. The house vanished from digital view. And Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, fragile and requiring daily life-saving heart medication, was never seen or heard from again. That is the chilling detail that transforms this case from a standard missing person report into something far colder and much more sinister. Nancy's disappearance did not begin with a loud struggle that woke the neighborhood. It did not begin with shattered glass echoing down a quiet street or a wild vehicle chase across the desert. It began with absolute, suffocating silence, the kind of silence that makes an affluent suburban neighborhood feel secure until you realize it was actually protecting a perpetrator. Nancy lived in a secluded enclave of the Catalina Foothills, an area characterized by large, multi-acre desert lots, long private driveways, and homes positioned far back from the main roadways. It is the type of community where a strange vehicle idling on the shoulder at 2 in the morning would instantly draw the attention of alert neighbors or private patrol cars. Yet on that night, almost nothing unusual was noticed by the surrounding residents. No neighbor reported a confrontation, no one heard calls for help, and no witness came forward with a view of what was transpiring behind those closed doors. The only concrete framework investigators possessed from those early hours was a digital timeline, and that timeline was unyieldingly, unforgivingly precise. At 9:48 p.m., Tomaso reportedly dropped Nancy off at her home. At 9:50 p.m., the electronic garage door log registered a closure. That single garage door event was more than just a domestic detail. It stood as the last confirmed proof in the file that Nancy Guthrie was alive and safely inside her residence. After that 9:50 p.m. timestamp, the night stretched forward silently into the dark. For nearly 5 hours, no outward physical activity was recorded around the property. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the intruder appeared. Forensic reviews of the brief doorbell clip described the suspect as heavily masked, layered in bulky, oversized clothing, carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail tactical backpack and with a handgun tucked awkwardly into the front waistband of their trousers. The entire outfit appeared specifically engineered to obscure the person's physical proportions, height, frame, and posture. The body was completely covered, the hands were gloved, and the face was hidden beneath layers of dark fabric. It appeared as though someone had planned not just to breach an isolated home, but to completely erase their biological and physical identity before ever stepping onto the front porch. But meticulous physical preparation is not the same thing as total operational control, And that is where the narrative begins to twist into something deeply unsettling. If this was a rapid, highly professional commercial abduction, the timeline inside the residence should have moved with extreme speed. In and out. Fast, quiet, and surgical. The kind of execution where every second counts and any unnecessary delay exponentially increases the risk of being caught. Yet, according to the official forensic timeline, the house remained shrouded in total darkness for 41 full minutes before Nancy's heart pacemaker connection to her cell phone finally dropped at 2:28 a.m. 41 minutes. That silent window stands as the central, unsolved enigma behind this entire investigation. 41 minutes after the exterior doorbell camera was manually blinded. 41 minutes before Nancy's medical telemetry ceased communicating with her mobile phone. 41 minutes inside a darkened home where no one on the outside could observe what was happening. The most haunting element of those 41 minutes is that Nancy's own body left behind one of the clearest chronological markers in modern criminal forensics. Because of her advanced age and medical needs, Nancy wore a specialized heart pacemaker that continuously synced via Bluetooth to an application installed on her smartphone. As long as Nancy remained within a short, physical Bluetooth range of her phone, typically sitting on her bedside table, the signal stayed continuously active. The second she was moved beyond that physical range, the system logged an immediate connection drop. The 2:28 a.m. disconnection was not an estimate, a guess, or a rough approximation made by detectives. It was a hard, digital timestamp recorded by a server. Technology did not prevent her abduction, but it recorded the precise minute her physical environment changed forever. By the following morning, the initial alarm was not raised by an automated security siren or a suspicious passerby. It came from a broken domestic routine. Nancy failed to log into her scheduled online Sunday church service. That sudden absence was immediately terrifying to those who knew her best, because Nancy was a woman of rigid, unbroken habits. When an 84-year-old woman with mobility challenges suddenly fails to appear for something she attends religiously every week, it signals an immediate crisis. Her family rushed to the home to conduct a welfare check. Upon entering, they found a scene that immediately set off alarms. Her mobile phone was sitting on her nightstand. Her purse, wallet, and personal belongings were completely untouched. Crucially, her daily required heart medications, pills that were vital to maintaining her life, were left sitting on the bedside table. But Nancy herself was nowhere to be found. An elderly woman who relied on a walker or assistance for long distances does not simply walk out into the Sonoran Desert in the middle of the night without her phone, without her shoes, without her vital medication, and without telling a single soul. Missing even 24 hours of those cardiac medications posed a life-threatening medical emergency. When Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived on the scene around noon, they were not evaluating a voluntary missing person case. They were standing inside a high-stakes crime scene that held Nancy's entire life, but not Nancy. At the center of that critical early timeline stood the last person confirmed to have seen her safe. In any high-profile disappearance, federal profilers and homicide detectives begin by mapping physical access, opportunity, and daily routines. Who understood Nancy's exact schedule? Who knew her house sat far back from the main road? Who knew she lived alone? Who understood how her garage door operated, where her security cameras were mounted, and when her neighborhood went completely quiet for the night? Tomaso Chioni became a primary focus of early investigative inquiries, simply because of timing, access, and physical proximity. He was the last documented individual to see Nancy safe inside her residence on the night of February 1st. That single, inescapable fact made his statement the baseline against which every other piece of forensic evidence had to be measured. As news of Nancy's disappearance broke, the quiet upscale house in the foothills turned into the center of a national media firestorm. The family's high profile, specifically her daughter Savannah Guthrie's role as a prominent national broadcast anchor, drew unprecedented public and law enforcement scrutiny. The chilling silent video of the masked intruder on the porch went viral across the globe, and the 41-minute gap inside that dark house became the single question nobody could stop asking. What actually occurred inside that home after the camera went dark at 1:47 a.m.? Was the intruder searching the property for specific financial or estate documents? Was Nancy confronted the exact second the front door was breached? Or was the entire terrifying kidnapping setup designed from the start to misdirect investigators away from a far more personal truth? As the physical search expanded across the Sonoran Desert, the investigative focus turned toward analyzing every fragment of evidence recovered from the perimeter of the home and the surrounding access routes. Nancy's residence sat in an area characterized by quiet streets, large private lots, and natural desert vegetation. At night, the location offered extreme privacy, but that privacy worked both ways. It protected the residents from street traffic, but it also provided a dark canopy for anyone attempting an undetected approach. To understand the mechanics of the crime, one must evaluate Nancy's physical vulnerabilities. At 84, she was sharp and mentally active, maintaining her weekly schedules and staying in regular contact with her children. However, her physical mobility was limited. She could not navigate rough terrain quickly, nor could she physically overpower an intruder. This reality makes the timeline inside the house even more critical. When deputies processed the interior of the home, they found no signs of a prolonged physical struggle in the living quarters or bedrooms. However, forensic testing later identified trace biological material linked to Nancy near the front porch threshold, indicating that the primary confrontation occurred right at the entry point. Did Nancy open the door to someone she recognized, or did the intruder force entry the moment the camera power was severed? If she recognized the person outside, it explains why there was no immediate acoustic disturbance or forced breach recorded on the exterior locks. This brings the investigation back to the 41-minute window between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m. If an abductor's sole objective was to extract an elderly victim for a fast extortion plot, staying inside a residence for nearly 3/4 of an hour exposes the perpetrator to extreme operational risk. Every passing minute increased the probability of a passing patrol car, a neighbor taking out trash, or an automated security ping. Three distinct possibilities emerge regarding that 41-minute delay. First, the intruder was searching the residence for specific items: estate documents, financial records, digital storage media, or high-value physical assets, before executing the removal. Second, the operation involved multiple actors, and the person inside was waiting for a secondary vehicle to position itself at a designated rendezvous coordinate along the highway corridor. Third, the initial encounter at the front door escalated into an unexpected physical crisis, forcing the intruder to spend valuable time attempting to manage a chaotic situation before moving Nancy away from the property. As investigators worked to resolve these possibilities, public attention turned to the execution of search warrants. On February 5th, 4 days after the disappearance, federal and local law enforcement executed a formal search warrant at the home shared by Tomaso Chioni and Nancy's daughter, Annie. Forensic teams spent hours searching the premises and seizing electronic hardware, including mobile devices and desktop storage units, inside metallic forensic containers designed to preserve digital state memory. A second search warrant was executed days later, as investigators sought to cross-reference cellular tower telemetry, router handshake logs, and vehicle transponder data against the statements provided during initial interviews. On February 16th, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos held a press briefing addressing the intense public speculation surrounding the family. Sheriff Nanos publicly cleared Tomaso Chioni, Nancy Guthrie, and the immediate family members, stating that they were fully cooperating victims of a devastating crime and urging the public to stop driving unverified online rumors. Law enforcement officials routinely execute deep forensic audits on the inner circle, not only to identify potential leads, but to systematically eliminate close contacts, thereby ensuring that any future prosecution against an outside actor cannot be challenged by defense claims of an incomplete early investigation. With the immediate family cleared, the task force shifted its primary focus to physical evidence recovered along potential escape corridors feeding away from the Catalina Foothills. Roughly 2 miles from the Guthrie home, search teams recovered a discarded utility glove. Forensic technicians extracted microscopic biological samples from the interior lining where skin cells had transferred onto the fabric. The resulting male DNA profile was run through CODIS, the FBI's national database, but returned no direct offender match, confirming that the individual who wore the glove had no prior felony record requiring mandatory DNA logging. To bypass this hurdle, federal units deployed investigative genetic genealogy, uploading the advanced genomic profile to open-source consumer databases to map familial connections. The analysis identified secondary genetic links, leading investigators to interview multiple individuals in the region to establish potential secondary contacts or employment associations. However, forensic processing also revealed that the biological material on the glove was a mixed DNA profile containing secondary trace elements, complicating the process of isolating a single, pristine genetic signature without extensive comparative testing. Furthermore, search teams operating along the 2-mile perimeter recovered multiple discarded gloves and items of clothing over the course of the multi-week search. While many of these items were determined to be unrelated environmental debris or items dropped by search personnel, each piece required rigorous laboratory processing to isolate actionable evidence from background noise. Parallel to the physical evidence processing, investigators analyzed private security footage retrieved from neighboring properties along the surrounding roadways. At 2:36 a.m., exactly 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker Bluetooth connection dropped, a doorbell camera positioned 2.5 miles away captured a dark, mid-sized vehicle traveling away from the foothills toward the regional highway network. The vehicle moved at a steady rate of speed, without headlights fully illuminated on the approach, switching its running lights on only after passing the residential intersection. The timing of this vehicle aligns precisely with the calculated transit window required to travel from Nancy's driveway to that outer perimeter coordinate. Adding to the complexity of the federal case were the digital ransom communications dispatched to media outlets and family representatives in the days following the disappearance. The messages demanded millions of dollars in untraceable cryptocurrency, setting aggressive deadlines and threatening harm if law enforcement remained involved. However, federal cyber units analyzing the message routing headers identified the use of multi-node proxy networks designed to obscure the sender's true IP address. Crucially, the senders failed to provide any verifiable proof of life, such as a real-time photograph, an audio phrase, or a specific personal detail known only to Nancy, causing profilers to evaluate whether the ransom demands were an active extortion attempt by the actual perpetrator or an opportunistic hoax deployed by an outside party exploiting the national headlines. Subsequently, federal agents arrested a California resident with no physical connection to the crime scene who had attempted to extort the family by sending fraudulent ransom demands using public details pulled from news broadcasts. As the investigation reached the 6-week mark, federal and local task forces continued analyzing the convergence of digital, forensic, and physical data points. A reward exceeding $1 million, combining family contributions and federal task force funds, remains active for information leading to Nancy's location or the conviction of those responsible. The investigation stands at a critical technological inflection point. The 41-minute gap inside the residence, the exact 2:28 a.m. pacemaker disconnection, the unmatched male DNA profile recovered from the desert glove, and the vehicle recorded fleeing the area at 2:36 a.m. represent concrete pieces of an unsolved puzzle. Federal investigators continue to systematically test every biological marker, trace every vehicle license plate captured along regional highway nodes, and monitor dark web communication channels. The digital signatures, cellular tower logs, and physical evidence left behind on that February morning remain permanently archived, waiting for the single forensic or genealogical match that will bring absolute clarity, closure, and justice to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.